Hello, world, and welcome to the Arc Report. Today we're going to be as if I'm just going to. I don't know what that was right there, but I came across this story right here about Dare and claims Dare claims HBO show Euphoria is glorifying drugs, and the Dare response back to Dare is Euphoria isn't a mortal tale. Well, to be honest with you, I don't see how Euphoria is glorifying drugs more than any other television show, movie, or music video or song that pushes and glorifies drugs on a daily basis. Even social media glorifies drugs, but I have yet to see or hear uh Dare mention that at any time. No, Dare wants to come along thinking that they are going to get an easy win off of HBO and Euphoria by stating that HBO's Euphoria is glorifying drugs. But here's the problem that I have with Dare that I just realized myself, which is the reason why I decided to do this story because though I hate to admit it sometimes, but some things just does boil down to the good old fashioned American way called race. Why do I say this? Well, drug sh- drug shows and things like that from what I gather and remember growing up were always catered to and towards the black African American community. What I mean by this is that growing up we had music that was more on the peaceful side and coming together in unity, and then it switched over to gangster rap, then it switched over to what we have here today called, drill rap. On top of that, all of that was catered to and geared towards the African American community. Even drug movies, you say that the only movies that we're interested in and we want to see is movies about drugs, prostitutes, and killing and everything else, which that's not true. But when that's the only thing that we have to consume, like what else do we have to choose from? I mean, people have complained about the lack of diversity on television when it comes to African Americans and African American stories. And even now, you claim you're trying to fill that void, but all the TV shows and the movies and music that I see coming out pushing and promoting is not the positive side of the African American community, not the brighter side, not the lighter side, not the joyful side, not the coming together side, not the families that most of us do have, still have, or have some kind of semblance of, even though America has worked hard to separate and keep separated the African American family. Getting back to this story, my problem here is when I was reading the news article, because again, Dare made their statement last month that nobody knew about because I guess nobody cares about how Dare feels, and Zendaya made her response this past week. But what caught me with this Dare article is the fact that the anti drug education group, founded nearly 40 years ago, released a statement late last month to warn against a racy teen drama now in its second season that has misguidedly and erroneously depicted high school drug use. First of all, I can tell you from the door that that whole statement from there is a lie because I was a teenager, I went to high school, and I know what happened once we came home from high school, especially in households where you probably had one parent and that parent probably had to work all day, which means you were left there home alone, you and your friends and family and whoever else is there, but there is no parent, no supervision, which means Now we can get together and plan, especially on the weekends. Whose house are we going to? Where are we going? Are we getting drunk this weekend? Are we smoking? What are we doing? But to sit and say that Euphoria is misguidedly and erroneously depicting high school drug use, no, I think they're actually on point. As a matter of fact, because of the fact that Euphoria is a television show, you won't really get the real true depiction of what really goes on. And you said after school. I'm sorry, Dare. Drug use goes on in and after school. Drug selling goes on in and after and during school. But like you and those others who claim they want to get rid of drugs, fight drugs, and everything else, we now know that it is a lie. You said Dare has been here for 40 years educating teens. Here's my problem. That is a joke. Dare has been spent 40 years miseducating the youth about drugs. And if you think I'm capping about that, marijuana commercials made by Dare are a joke. Why do I say that? I don't know anyone who smokes marijuana who, should I say, sits around after smoking marijuana and just busts out laughing. I don't know anyone who smokes marijuana and drives into someone with their car because they were under the influence of marijuana. I don't know anyone that has happened to. What I do know has happened is when you're under the drugs of hard drugs like crack and cocaine, coke and dope. Listen, I know some of the words sound similar, but when you're from where I'm from, they claim that those are different kind of names, and to me, they're all the same drug. People have accidents. They do crazy things when they're under those drugs. I know people who have ran into somebody or caused accidents while under the use of alcohol. I have never heard anyone doing what it was that you claim in your videos, your commercials. You claim those are commercials, your PSAs, where people just sit around smoking weed, laughing, or running over children and laughing, as that doesn't happen. If anything, when something like that happens, you're actually pulled out of what you were in. And most people that happened to get angry because then they got to go and get back in again. But because you misdepicted what would happen to you when you're on these drugs, you only cause more of the youth to go out and seek some of these drugs. The only thing you were good at keeping kids from doing is coke and dope, crack and cocaine. Party drugs, you force the youth to go out and do them because, again, you depicted them wrong. And I believe that was done on purpose. If anything, you should have been educating the parents on what to look out and what dangers there are for these things to happen. And that you didn't even do. You've been here for 40 years. This would, I believe, make the 40th year. Because if I remember you being out there in the 80s. I remember every day we being taught about don't do drugs is bad, yada, 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 yada. Problem is, we only seen you when we went to school, and we can clock the time of the year you're going to show up. You said you've been fighting this war on drugs for 40 years, which means how much money have you gotten from the government and donations over 40 years that you have yet to use to close the border that allows drugs to enter this country? We don't make drugs. Drugs are not created in my community. As a matter of fact, your community creates a drug called meth. My community doesn't make that drug. Drugs get trafficked to my community. Drugs get sold to people who distribute the drugs in my community. You allow them to come in, you manufacture. We just get locked up and persecuted while you gain wealth, both on the legal and illegal side of the transaction. However, if you ask me, Euphoria is a better PSA of the dangers that drugs and social media have in our community, to our youth, how it affects them, how it affects the family, and how it affects everyone in between and around. Recently, Zendaya did an interview with Entertainment Weekly. I will have a link to that interview uh, in the description below. In the interview, Zendaya says, Our show is in no way a moral tale to teach people how to live their life or what they should be doing. If anything, the feeling behind euphoria, or whatever we have always been trying to do with it, is to hopefully help people feel a little bit less alone in their experience and their pain, and maybe feel like they're not the only one going through or dealing with what they're dealing with. And with that, I can say after watching the first season of Euphoria, they did a great job at doing that. They actually showed how bad it was for this young woman, which the characters that they played was on drugs. She fought to get off of drugs, relapsed back on drugs, the effect that her drug habit has on her family, her little sister, her mom, her friends. And then you have all the other connecting stories about the other people inside her community. But what I find that D.a.r.e. has a problem with that made me realize is that you don't care that Euphoria is talking about drugs or have drug use in there. Because the funny thing is, if I'm not mistaken, not only does Euphoria have drug use in the first episode, you claim Euphoria is pushing drug use. This one is not even in my notes that I have written down here, but if memory serves me correctly, if anything you should have been outraged with is Euphoria had underage sex abuse in there when there was a father having sex with a transgender teenager in Euphoria. But no, that's not the problem. Your fake excuse or reasoning is Euphoria is promoting drugs and Euphoria is not. Euphoria is shedding a light now on your community. When for years you've all been shedding a light and exposing and making bigger something that was small in my community, now it's being shed on yours. For years, the only movies we had showed that my people were drug addicts, pimps, hoes, gangbangers, scammers, killers. But now you have something that is really showing not something that happened 10, 20 years ago. Oh no, you don't care about that. You don't care if it was something that happened in your past that is not going on now because it doesn't matter because it's not going on now. You're mad because your children are the people that Euphoria is speaking of. And why do you think that I'm saying this? Or, oh no, you're lying. I'm making this up. Actually, I'm not lying. I'm not making this up because the creator of Euphoria made the show and it is patterned after his life. Euphoria, one of Euphoria's co creators His name is, let me give me one moment while I find it. I wrote it down. Again, I moved it so much because there is a. Well, his last name is Levinson. I want to say Sam, but I'm not too sure. But I know for a fact it's Levinson because this is right here. Levinson has said that Rue's journey mirrors his own growing up. Again, with the last name Levinson, you already know he's not from my community. So if he's not from mine, whose is he from? Levinson said, I spent the majority of my teenage years in and out of hospitals, rehabs, and halfway houses. I was a drug addict. And and I take anything and everything until I couldn't hear or breathe or feel. This is what the co-creator, director, and producer said. And he's now 14 years clean. This is the reason why the depictions of all of this abuse is so real and hits close to home because this man is writing from his personal experience. When you say, and this bothers me, that Euphoria is glorifying drug use, I have to call this bullshit. Euphoria is just doing what it is that African Americans, those who you call black in this Americas, those that you kidnapped and put into slavery in this here United States of America, have been doing and trying to do for as long as I can remember. Our art reflects our society. What society has done, and those in power, has taken that art, flipped it, reversed it, and made society a reflection of the art. This is the reason why we can't get past our past. Because whenever we get close to getting past our past, someone, something comes along and pushes us back into the past. If you want to, if you would like to read the rest of the story and claims of BS that D.a.r.e. has um, put against HBO and Euphoria and what Zendaya and her cast had to say, especially about this. Recently, they was talking about an episode that they are preparing to do, which may or may not be out once you see this show, where Rue is going crazy. I've seen the clips of it. Rue's going crazy, running around town, basically having a breakdown. Uh, something that drug people who have substance abuse goes through. I guess when they relapse or something gets I don't know. You'll have to see it for yourself. But they said that it was a very strong episode. I haven't watched it yet, but I plan to. The point is, you will be able to see that, read this, also some things about the lies of D.a.r.e. Links will be down in the bio. Now, my final thoughts on this whole thing is this. D.a.r.e. has been around for 40 years. And the drug problem is no more better now than it was then. If you ask me, the drug problem is worse. Why do I say this? Well, drugs are easily accessible in the 21st century. Social media has made it even more easy for people to connect and basically find a drug dealer, drug supplier, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Actually, social media and the internet has made it easy to find everything. Everything that you used to have to hide behind closed doors and in a corner somewhere, you can now go openly to social media and find this stuff. I remember there was a time where the only way you were able to find adult mature content, you would have to Google it on the internet. Now you don't. You can go to Twitter, and I'm finding it weird that I can find adult content like this on Twitter openly. And no one complains, no one has a problem, but Euphoria is exposing all of this, presenting shit in the light on all of this, and you want to say that Euphoria is the problem. You say Euphoria misguidedly and erroneously depicted high school drug use. I say again that is bullshit. Drug use is a problem then, now, and always in and outside of high schools. Can it be fixed? Yes. Will it be fixed? No. Why? Because there is no money in solutions, there's only money in problems. Parents work all day, kids are left home alone. Like I said, we already knew whose house was the house to be at this weekend because your parents wasn't going to be home. You had the house all day. We all know how this go. There are those, even some of our parents, who may sit and pretend like they didn't know what was going on, but you knew what was going on. The same way I would know what it is that is going on with my children. Why? Because I would be involved, pay attention, and ask questions where no one was involved with us. They didn't pay attention, they didn't ask questions. Because why? Well, they got caught up in what I have to say here next. Drug use at teen parties has never been a secret. First of all, when you're going from the making that transition from middle school to high school, you're starting to go out, you're starting to go to school parties, you're starting to go to house parties, you're starting to get involved more away from your family. And the first thing, the funny that you learn is drugs and alcohol. Why is that? Where is that? Well, our music, our movies, our TV shows pushed into the Black and African American community. You say that Euphoria is misguidedly and erroneously depicting high school drug use. Again, I say bullshit because the 70s promoted drugs. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't that the whole hippie thing that was going on in the 70s? I also remember in the 80s seeing the pictures and the parties that they had in the 70s, and y'all made us think that that was cool. And then we go to the 80s where, oh, this is when you hired us to sell your crack. And then after you got the money, you threw us in jail. That was the 80s, but yet you say that Euphoria misguidedly and erroneously depicts high school drug use. So you didn't have nothing to say to the music and movie industries in the 90s? Last time I checked, wasn't Minister Society out then? Boys in the Hood. Am I missing something? NWA came out. There has been rumblings, both quietly and openly at this point in time, about the plan that the music industry had to destroy the African American community. And I didn't hear D.a.r.e. make one claim, come out and protest and be angry and say we need to do something about this, not one time. But the moment that them drugs showed up in your community, that the moment that them TV shows showed up promoted to your children, because let's be clear here, I even had to go over the cast list of Euphoria. Come to realize there are only a handful, if that, African American black actors in the movie. And here's the thing, Zendaya and Storm are also in it, but they're playing who they are in real life, biracial women. I have no problem with that. This show is now, in my mind, and those around me, is this is your show, catered to your community and your children, and now you're pissed. Also, there's a show that's on right now that is being pushed to my community, but I kind of I'm not angry at this show. This show is called Snowfall. Why am I not angry at Snowfall? Because Snowfall is actually chronicling what you did to my community, how D.a.r.e. helped to push this in my community by pretending to fight it, but yet I don't see what you were fighting, because my whole generation, which was it was D.a.r.e., if I'm not mistaken, who said that Generation X was the lost generation, and you had me thinking, and those of us well born in the 80s thinking that we were Generation X, the lost generation. So you failed Generation X because you've been here 40 years. So you failed Generation X. So then I found out I'm a millennial. You've been here for 40 years. Again, I tell you, you failed Generation X, you failed the millennials. And at this point, you're failing Gen Z. So I ask you, with all the money you swindled out of, and your people actually claim Leo Rush swindled WWE and AEW out of their contracts. You swindled the government out of taxpayers' money for 40 years with nothing to show for it. Oh, but you think you're going to come out now, join in this parade with everybody else in the cancel culture and talk about that Euphoria is promoting something that Euphoria is not promoting. Euphoria is shedding a light. Euphoria is doing what you should have been doing. My other question is, why is it that suicide prevention people are working with Euphoria? I see they things all the time at the end of the show. But I have never seen D.a.r.e. at the end of that show. I haven't seen D.a.r.e. in support and where people can come in contact if they have trouble at the end of no drug, prostitution, or any kind of show catered towards an African American in our community. But the moment Euphoria comes and really tells the world, this is what's going on in the so-called white communities. That, yeah, for so long, so many years, decades, generations, we've been lying to you, Susie. We've been lying to you, Joey. You ain't no different than them niggers over there. Because that's exactly what it is. I've been saying this for the longest, and I will say this again. In the year 2022, race as we knew it is imaginary, fictional, make believe, and only used as a tool to quiet those who wish to speak out against the BS that we see going on right now. To be honest with you, black and white are only two categories. There's no such thing as brown people. Anybody else they try to want to add to this conversation, because you're delusional and you're lying to yourself. Black and white is only rich and poor. At this point, the whites have the money and the blacks don't. I don't mean as in skin color, because as I said, black and white is not about skin color. It is about what's in your pocket. Because the same way you see now, there are other groups of people that we can't talk about, we can't make fun of, we can't do anything about. My community gets it all the time. But then when one of you say something, let's just say like a Joe Rogan, then they want to use the racism to put you away. That is the only reason why they still want to push racism, because it's an easy tool to use to get rid of anyone that is not African American who steps out of line. Another reason why I say race is imaginary and it's just finance. My community was destroyed when you introduced drugs into my community. You destroyed my families. You destroyed friendships. Even to this day. The reason why, in your mind, you probably think that the reason why I wrote my novel, Mind Games, A Brick City Story, yes, I'm an author. You can find it, the link in all my links down below. But the reason why I wrote Mind Games, A Brick City Story was because it was something that I realized growing up in a low income neighborhood here in Newark, New Jersey. When I was in elementary school, I didn't know what drugs were. I didn't know what a drug dealer was. I didn't know what a fiend was. I didn't know any of it. I lived in the projects. There was a lot of us who were kids who lived in the projects. We didn't know what that was. We seen things on TV, but around the neighborhood, there were people. We just thought there were people outside. We didn't know what it was they were doing. We just know there was people outside. My view of it changed, where I start to ask the question of why would people want to do this and why are they out there? Is when one day I'm sitting in front of my building with my friends, and at this time now we're gonna start going from middle school to high school now, and a drug addict came to us and asked to buy drugs, and we were confused because we didn't know what that was. And they was confused because they thought that because we were look where we looked how we looked, that we were out there doing that, and that was not the case. And for a long time, I didn't like them until one day I actually sat back and I observed my environment. I heard the stories of my friends and their family. I have heard the stories of those who came before us that were out there. I watched how everybody moved. I watched what they did for the community, and it was crazy to me. What was not really crazy was we knew what was going on around there, but there was still a sense of family when there was a chance to be. I remember growing up, like I said, D.a.r.e. presented the drug use in the wrong way. While you only seen us when we happened to be in school, that one time of year that you happen to want to show up and do a program and give out a backpack and a notebook and a pencil, we had those in our community that, yes, they may have been out there doing wrong, but I will tell you this, every summer we was ready for that block party season to kick off. Because every community out there had a party, they gave back, and we forgot what was going on. Am I saying that that is right? No. But that was the environment that we lived in. That was the environment that you created. That was the environment that we adapted to. And now that you see that my environment is creeping into your environment, you don't know what to do. While we're used to knowing how to live off of less, your people want to end yourselves because you don't know how to live off of less. That is the reason why euphoria bothers you. Euphoria does not bother you because they're supposed to be promoting drugs. Euphoria bothers you because those kids look like you. Them kids look like your neighbors. Them kids look like your sons, your daughters, your nieces, your nephews, your students in your local high school. And now, when you're looking at your kids, you're not sitting at home like, your racist judge Odinette with her family around the TV, watching stories about African Americans laughing, saying, look at this nigger. Look at this dumb nigger. Stupid nigger. No, you can't do that now when you watch Euphoria. See, when you watch Snowfall, you can. And say, see, this is why they can't never have shit. But Euphoria is showing you that you're no different than us. Euphoria is not proving to us or showing us that you're no different than us. We've always known this and we've always told you this. But you were always foolish enough to think that you were better. And you're not better. You're just the opposite side of the same coin they use to keep both sides in order while both sides are now enslaved, raped, mistreated, misguided, hoodwinked, bamboozled, robbed. Anything else you want to say? Until we realize we may be different nationalities, we may come from different countries and from different continents. That is how far our differences go. And until we get past that one part that they don't want us to, that they created just for this reason, until we start to realize that race is imaginary, because if you boils down to it's just about color of skin. And if that's the case, what do you call a dark-skinned Indian, a dark-skinned Mexican, a dark-skinned Hispanic and Latino? What do you call dark-skinned people in Russia? Or Poland? Or Morocco? Or deep down in the history of London, what do you call those things? What do you call those people? Race is imaginary. Black and white is really about wealth. The white have it, the black don't. Because if you want to be honest, African Americans are only invited to the door when it comes to wealth, because the moment that they step out of line, well, we got a long history that tells us what happened, like Wesley Snipes and Bill Cosby. And I even hear now, and they still trying to come after Bill Cosby, like how they just came after R. Kelly again, trying to say that Bill Cosby was doing drugs and sex trafficking, which I'm not understanding how y'all got that far, but okay. And then you got the R. Kelly and so forth and so on. So like I said, until we start to realize the same thing they do to us, they do to you. And if you don't understand what that means, they tell the African American community right now that our biggest enemy and biggest threat is the police department. That's what they got us men and women believing in the African American community. But the one thing that they forget to add of the counterpart that the women have to face in the African American community is, while if we want to go with the narrative that society and the media is telling us, while they're killing us while the police kill us in the streets, the doctors kill us in the hospitals. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about right now. Maybe I do. But I will say this. My name is Akeisha Ocklord Mullins, and this is the Yacht Report. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and what say you?